Before there was Adam, before the first breath of a human being was ever drawn, this world was not empty. It was not silent, nor was it waiting in stillness. It was alive with a creation that many have forgotten, a creation that roamed the earth long before us, a creation made of fire. Who were they? These beings that filled the mountains, the deserts, and the oceans. Who ruled the world before humanity's story began? Write in the comments where you are joining us from so we can see the unity of our worldwide ummah. And if your heart is with Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, subscribing to our channel makes a real difference in keeping this message alive. The Quran and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, along with the insights of early scholars, inform us of a creation that is both fascinating and terrifying. The Jinn. They are not myths, nor are they mere legends. They are a reality spoken of in Revelation, living unseen in a realm parallel to ours. Yet their story stretches back to a time when the earth was theirs alone. To understand who the Jinn are, one must first understand that Allah did not leave this world lifeless until He created man. The angels glorified Him in the heavens. The animals moved in their domains. But on this earth walked intelligent beings with choice. Beings who could believe or disbelieve. Beings who could love or destroy. They were the Jinn. And long before Adam was shaped from clay, the world belonged to them. The Quran opens the door to their reality. In a verse both profound and straightforward, Allah says in Surah Ar-Rahman, "And He created the Jinn from a smokeless flame of fire." This statement alone separates them from every other creation we know. Humans were formed from clay, a substance rooted in the earth, heavy and grounded. Angels were created from light, pure and radiant beings who never disobey the command of their Lord. But the Jinn were born from fire, not the fire that burns wood or boils water, but a subtle and smokeless flame, a fire of energy and spirit. This essence gave them qualities unlike any other creation. From it came their speed, their invisibility, and their ability to take forms. From it came their restless nature, their strength, and their longing for freedom. Just as humans carry the dust of earth in our flesh and bones, the Jinn carry the scorching essence of fire within their being. The very name Jinn comes from the Arabic root jana, which means to hide, to conceal, to be veiled. They are a hidden creation, invisible to us. Yet they see us. They move through the world around us while remaining beyond our eyes. They live, they die, they eat, they drink, they marry, they raise families, they form communities. They are not phantoms of imagination, but a creation of Allah with free will, just like us. And because they are free to choose, they are accountable. They can worship Allah in sincerity or turn away in arrogance. Some of them believe, some reject, and among them are those who strive for righteousness and those who rebel as devils. Long before Adam was placed on earth, the Jinn spread across the globe. Scholars narrate that they built civilizations, explored every corner of the planet, walked the mountains, and sailed the seas. Their lives were not limited by the short spans of human years. Their strength and speed gave them dominance over the world, and for a time they flourished. Yet their story was not one of harmony. As centuries passed, arrogance crept into their hearts. They grew proud of their abilities, intoxicated by their strength, and they turned against one another. Wars erupted, blood was spilled, and the earth became soaked in their corruption. Entire tribes of Jinn fought against each other, filling the world with chaos. This is why when Allah told the angels, "Indeed, I will place a successor on earth," the angels asked, "Will you place upon it one who will cause corruption and shed blood while we glorify you with praise and sanctify you?" They were not speaking without reason. They were recalling the history of the Jinn who had ruled the world before humanity, the beings of fire that had destroyed themselves through war and rebellion. They had witnessed the corruption of a creation that had free will, and they feared that humanity, given the same freedom, might follow the same path. But despite their rebellion, the Jinn were not created without purpose. Allah makes this clear in the Quran. I did not create the Jinn and mankind except to worship me. Their very existence, like ours, is tied to the recognition of their Creator. They were allowed to live in obedience, to submit, to glorify Allah, and to seek His mercy. They had the capacity for faith, and among them were those who turned sincerely to their Lord. Yet many turned away. Some chose disbelief, others pursued arrogance, and among them rose the worst of all, those who allied themselves with Shaytan, devils who work only to mislead and corrupt. The Jinn were diverse, just as humanity would later be. Some were scholars of their kind, others were warriors. Some devoted their lives to worship, while others drowned themselves in mischief. They had communities, they spoke languages, they held beliefs, and they faced the same test that we face today, whether to use their free will in the service of Allah or to waste it in arrogance and rebellion. The Quran even tells us of groups of jinn who heard the recitation of the Quran itself during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. They listened in awe and said, "Indeed, we have heard a wondrous Quran. It guides to the right course, and we have believed in it." Some jinn embraced Islam and returned to their people as warners, calling them to faith. This alone shows us that the world of the jinn is not merely one of devils, but of believers and disbelievers, just like us. Yet the fact that they were made of fire shaped not only their abilities, but their temperament. Fire is quick, restless, and hard to contain. It can bring warmth, but it can also destroy. So too are the jinn, capable of greatness but vulnerable to arrogance, jealousy, and pride. It was this very essence that would later define the rebellion of Iblis, who declared himself greater than Adam simply because of the element from which he was made. This arrogance led him from the highest ranks of worship into the depths of eternal curse. The story of the jinn's creation is, therefore, more than history. It is a mirror reflecting the dangers of pride and the importance of humility. The world before Adam was not barren. It was alive with fire and shadow, with beings of immense strength and terrible potential. They walked the earth, they ruled it, they corrupted it, and they were judged by it. Their story explains why humanity's arrival was met with hesitation from the angels, why the command to bow to Adam was such a turning point, and why the lessons of the jinn are warnings meant for us. Their rebellion shows us what happens when arrogance outweighs submission, when power blinds the heart, and when creation forgets its creator. The story of the jinn did not stop at their creation, nor did it end with their simple existence upon the earth. After Allah created them from smokeless fire, they were given free will, the ability to make choices, to believe or to reject, to live in peace or to spread corruption. With this gift came the responsibility of being tested. And the jinn, just like humanity would later experience, entered into the trial of life. In the beginning, they spread across the vastness of the earth. They did not live in silence, but in societies. They were not a scattered handful of spirits drifting in the shadows, but a living, thriving creation. Scholars narrate that they built communities much like humans would later build towns and cities. They raised families, developed forms of organization, and explored every part of the earth. They were rulers of mountains, dwellers of deserts, inhabitants of the oceans, and wanderers of forests. They had chiefs and leaders, as well as tribes and clans. Their civilizations spanned the globe, stretching from one end to the other, and for a long time they were the dominant beings on earth. They were not, however, guided by the kind of prophetic mission that humanity would later receive in such abundance. While among them were those who turned to Allah in worship and sought to live in obedience, Many others were consumed by arrogance and the temptations of their fiery essence. Fire is restless, it is uncontained, it grows quickly and destroys as much as it gives light. This was reflected in their temperament. Pride grew within them, envy spread, and soon their societies fell into conflict. They fought wars, tribe against tribe, spilling blood and destroying one another's dwellings. The earth became a place of corruption and unrest. They had been entrusted with free will and the opportunity to worship, yet so many of them misused this gift, filling the land with mischief and chaos. It was because of this corruption that the angels, when told by Allah that He would place a new creation upon the earth, questioned His decision. The Quran recounts this in Surah Al-Baqarah, where the angels asked, "Will you place upon it one who will cause corruption and shed blood, while we glorify you with praise and sanctify you?" Their question was not rebellion against the command of Allah, for the angels never disobey, but rather an expression of what they had already witnessed with the Jinn. They had seen how a free-willed creation given dominion over the earth had destroyed peace and spread bloodshed. They wondered, would humanity do the same? Would Adam and his children simply repeat the cycle of destruction that the Jinn had already fallen into? Allah responded, "Indeed, I know that which you do not know." In these words is the reminder that the plan of Allah carries wisdom far beyond the perception of His creation. The Jinn had reached a point where their violence and rebellion demanded intervention. Narrations from early scholars, such as Ibn Abbas and others, explain that Allah sent the angels to the earth to bring order and suppress corruption. The angels descended by His command, and they fought against the most rebellious among the Jinn. Battles took place, with the angels striking down those who spread bloodshed and driving others into exile. Some were pushed into the mountains, others into the depths of the oceans, and many were scattered into desolate lands far from the populated earth. Their rule was broken, their civilizations reduced to fragments, and their dominance over the planet was brought to an end. It was a great cleansing that marked the downfall of the Jinn's reign over the world. Among the Jinn, however, there was one who did not join in the corruption of his people. He fought alongside the angels against the disobedient Jinn. His devotion and struggle elevated him to a position of honor. This was Iblis, though not an angel, for he was created from fire and not from light. His devotion was so great that he was raised among their ranks. He prayed, he worshipped, and he was counted among the pious for a time. His obedience set him apart from the destruction of his kind. Allah elevated him in position, yet within him the seeds of pride remained dormant, waiting for the moment they would destroy everything he had achieved. His presence among the angels during the battles against the rebellious Jinn would later explain why he was there when Allah commanded the angels to bow before Adam. He was not an angel himself, but he had been honored with their company. The Angelic War against the Jinn stands as one of the most forgotten chapters of creation's history. It reveals that the earth has never been untouched or innocent ground. By the time Adam was created, the soil of the planet had already drunk the blood of battles. The stones of the mountains had already echoed with cries of war, and the oceans had already hidden the exiles of the defeated Jinn. The placement of Adam and his children upon the earth was not into a pure paradise, but into a world that had been the stage of conflict and rebellion. The trust of being Allah's Khalifa, His representative upon the earth, came with a weight of responsibility to succeed where the Jinn had failed. The cleansing of the earth by the angels was not the end of the Jinn, but only the end of their dominance. They continued to live, hidden in remote places, scattered across the earth, dwelling in deserts, ruins, mountains, and seas. Some remained rebellious and would later become the allies of Iblis, while others turned to obedience and faith. But the world they once ruled would soon be given to a new creation, a creation of clay, weaker in body but destined to receive prophets and guidance. This was the difference between humanity and the Jinn. Where the Jinn had spread unchecked, humanity would be guided by messengers, scripture, and revelation. The struggle between obedience and rebellion would continue, but now with the light of divine guidance illuminating the path. This history also explains the wisdom behind the angels' question. They were not doubting the command of Allah, but remembering what they had seen of the Jinn. Their question was rooted in the memory of corruption, and Allah's answer was rooted in His knowledge of the future. For within humanity would rise prophets, saints, and righteous believers who would uphold the worship of Allah and purify the earth with justice. Where the Jinn had fallen into bloodshed, the children of Adam would carry the message of divine truth, even if many among them would also stray. This was the distinction, the balance that explained why humanity was chosen to inherit the earth after the fall of the Jinn. The rise and fall of the Jinn civilizations and the war that followed form a foundation of understanding. It teaches us that the world has always been a place of struggle between obedience and rebellion, between light and darkness. It reminds us that the trust we carry as the children of Adam is not light or simple. We were given the earth after others corrupted it, and we were chosen to bear the responsibility of living as servants of Allah in a world where even powerful beings before us had failed. The battles of the Jinn and the angels, the pride of Iblis and his later rebellion, all serve as warnings. They are not distant tales of an unseen past, but lessons that echo into our present. For if a creation as strong and swift as the Jinn could be brought low by arrogance, what then of us, who are far weaker in body but entrusted with the same free will? Iblis was not always the enemy of humanity. His name once carried a weight of devotion, for he had lived among the angels, raised high by his acts of worship. Unlike his fellow Jinn who spread corruption across the earth, Iblis turned against them and fought alongside the angels during the great battles that cleansed the world of rebellion. He was not an angel, for angels are created from light and never disobey, while Iblis was created from fire and carried free will within him. Yet his devotion was so great, his striving so persistent, that he was elevated into the company of the angels. He prayed with them, he obeyed the commands of Allah, and he occupied a station that was unmatched by any of his kind. Scholars describe him as a devout worshipper, spending long ages in obedience. And it is because of this devotion that when the command was given to bow to Adam, he was present among the angels. His presence there was a mark of honor, a reflection of the height he had reached, but it was also the moment when his hidden arrogance would rise to the surface. When Allah fashioned Adam from clay and breathed his spirit into him, he commanded the angels to bow down in respect to the new creation. It was not a bow of worship, for none is worshipped but Allah, but a bow of recognition, a declaration that Adam was chosen as the Khalifa upon the earth, the one entrusted with responsibility, knowledge, and guidance. The angels bowed, all of them without hesitation, for they never disobey their Lord. But Iblis stood firm in defiance. His pride ignited, his arrogance overflowed, and he declared, "I am better than him. You created me from fire and him from clay." These words exposed the seed that had long been hidden in his heart. For all his worship, for all his striving, he had not purified himself from arrogance. His devotion was outward, but inside he carried the disease of pride. In that single moment, his entire history of obedience was destroyed. The station of honor he had been given was stripped away. Allah cast him out from the ranks of the angels and declared him cursed until the day of judgment. His fall was swift, his disgrace eternal. He begged for respite, asking Allah to delay his punishment until the day of judgment, and Allah granted it as part of his divine plan. From that moment, Iblis became Shaytan, the sworn enemy of humanity. vowing to mislead the children of Adam and to drag as many as possible into rebellion alongside him. His story stands as a terrifying warning, for he had worshipped for ages, fought evil among his kind, and stood among the angels. Yet one act of arrogance destroyed it all. This is the danger of pride. It is a poison that can nullify years of worship, a disease that can transform devotion into rebellion. Iblis teaches us that outward acts are not enough if the heart is corrupted. One moment of arrogance can outweigh a lifetime of apparent righteousness. This is why humility is so central in faith. It is why the Quran constantly reminds humanity that everything we are and everything we have is from Allah alone. The story of Iblis is not only the story of the first rebellion against Adam. It is a mirror for every believer. It shows us that arrogance is the door through which faith collapses, and pride is the path that leads straight into the footsteps of Shaytan. The fall of Iblis also reveals the purpose of humanity's existence. The angels had questioned why another creation of free will was to be placed upon the earth when the Jinn had already filled it with bloodshed. But Allah knew what they did not know. Humanity would not only bring corruption. From the children of Adam would rise prophets, martyrs, and righteous servants who would uphold the truth. Where the Jinn had failed, humanity would carry the trust with the guidance of revelation. Yet the story of Iblis served as a reminder to Adam's children that the test is real. The world into which we were placed was already stained with the rebellion of those before us. The struggle between obedience and disobedience, between humility and arrogance, had already begun long before Adam walked the earth. We entered into an ongoing battle, inheriting both the responsibility and the danger. The lessons from the Jinn's rebellion and Iblis's fall are profound. They show that no amount of worship can protect a heart tainted by pride. They show that being counted among the righteous means nothing if arrogance is allowed to fester. They show that Allah's wisdom in creating humanity was not merely to repeat the failures of the Jinn, but to provide a creation that could rise above pride, guided by prophets and scripture, even though many would also fall into the same mistakes. This history is not a tale locked in the past. The rebellion of Iblis continues to this day. He and his followers whisper into the hearts of humanity, driving them toward arrogance, envy, and disobedience. They repeat the same lies that Iblis told himself. That fire is better than clay, that wealth is better than poverty, that status is better than humility. Every act of arrogance in the world today is a continuation of that first act of defiance. Every heart that refuses to bow to Allah, every soul that sees itself as superior to others, walks upon the same path that led to ruin. The earth, therefore, has always been a battlefield. From the time of the Jinn, through the rebellion of Iblis, to the arrival of Adam and his children, it has been a place of struggle between good and evil. This is why Allah's trust in humanity is so heavy. We were not created to wander. We were made to worship, to purify the earth with justice, and to uphold the truth where others had failed. The story of the Jinn before us and the story of Iblis among them is a reminder of what happens when arrogance is chosen over humility. It warns us that the test of free will is not one to be taken lightly, for even the most devout can fall if pride enters the heart. The lesson is immense, yet straightforward. No creation is safe from destruction if it turns away from humility. The Jinn lost their dominion over the earth because of their bloodshed and pride. Iblis lost his station among the angels because of his arrogance. Humanity is now the bearer of the trust, and our story is still unfolding. Will we fall into the same corruption, or will we rise above it? That is the question that defines our existence. The powers of the Jinn are among the most mysterious and awe-inspiring aspects of their existence. And it is through the Quran and authentic reports from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that we are given glimpses into the extraordinary abilities Allah granted them. Unlike humanity, who are bound by the weight of clay and the limitations of flesh, the Jinn were created from a smokeless flame of fire. Their very essence is energy, restless and swift, and from this essence comes a set of abilities that surpass human comprehension. Yet no matter how impressive their powers appear, the will of Allah always limits them, and they can never rival His authority. The Quran provides a striking example in the story of Prophet Sulaiman, peace be upon him, who was granted a kingdom unlike any other, a kingdom that extended over humanity, animals, birds, and even the Jinn. Allah's command had given Sulaiman control over them, and they were made to serve him. In Surah An-Naml, Allah describes how Sulaiman once asked who could bring him the throne of the Queen of Sheba before she arrived. A mighty Jinn, an Ifrit, rose and declared, "I will bring it to you before you rise from your place. Verily, I am strong and trustworthy." The claim alone shows the magnitude of their strength, for the throne was vast and heavy, and the distance was great. The Ifrit was confident that he could transport it across lands in a short period. Yet, before he could act, another servant of Allah, one who knew the book, spoke and said, "I will bring it to you before your gaze returns to you." And in the blink of an eye, the throne appeared before Sulaiman. This story reminds us of two truths. The Jinn do indeed possess incredible power, able to move physical objects with speed and force that defy human ability. However, the knowledge and authority that Allah grants to His chosen servants surpass even their might. From this example, scholars have explained that the powers of the Jinn include super speed and the ability to traverse vast distances in moments. They can cover the earth in ways humanity cannot imagine, moving unseen through places where no human could survive. They can also take on various forms, appearing as animals or even humans, though never perfectly. Reports tell us that some Jinn appear as black dogs, snakes, or shadowy figures. Others mimic human forms, as in the well-known incident of Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, who caught a thief stealing from the charity of Ramadan, only to learn that it was a Shaytan in disguise. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, confirmed this when he told Abu Huraira that though the Shaytan was a liar in that moment, he had spoken the truth when advising him to recite Ayat al-Kursi for protection. These stories illustrate that Jinn can indeed walk among us in forms we might not recognize, blending into the physical world with an appearance of solidity. Another of their abilities is invisibility. This is not invisibility in the sense of bending light, but rather an inherent part of their nature. They exist in a realm parallel to ours, concealed by design, for Allah has made them unseen to the eyes of humanity. The Quran reminds us in Surah Al-A'raf that Shaytan and his tribe see us from where we cannot see them. This concealment gives them an advantage in whispering and observing and in moving through the world without notice. Yet, this invisibility is also a test, for it can lead humans to fear them excessively or to seek them out, and both of these paths can open doors to harm. One of their most dangerous abilities is their ability to influence the thoughts of others. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us that Shaytan flows through the children of Adam like blood. Their whispers touch the heart, planting seeds of doubt, envy, pride, or despair. These whispers are subtle, often indistinguishable from our thoughts, and that is what makes them dangerous. They cannot force anyone to sin, but they can suggest, entice, and tempt. Every person feels this inner battle, the pull toward obedience to Allah and the whisper toward disobedience. This ability of the jinn makes them central to the test of humanity, for their whispers are constant, but our protection lies in remembrance of Allah and seeking His refuge. There are also cases where, by Allah's permission, jinn possess the ability to affect humans more directly. The Quran describes those who consume interest as standing like one beaten by Shaytan into madness, an image that many scholars interpret as a reference to possession. While actual possession is rare and always limited, it is a reality acknowledged by revelation. The jinn, particularly the rebellious ones, may enter into a person's body, influencing their mind or causing them harm. This, however, is never independent of Allah's will. Just as illness or calamity may be a test, so too can affliction by the jinn be a test of faith, patience, and reliance upon Allah. Yet, for all their strength, the jinn remain weak in comparison to the power of Allah. Their knowledge is limited, their lifespan finite, and their abilities bound by His command. The Quran gives us a striking example in the story of the death of Sulaiman. When he died, leaning on his staff, the jinn continued to labor under his command, thinking he was still alive. They did not know of his death until a creature of the earth, a termite, gnawed away at his staff and his body fell. It was only then that they realized the truth. Allah used this moment to show that the jinn do not possess knowledge of the unseen. They are not all-knowing, and their powers do not extend beyond what Allah allows. This is why seeking knowledge or guidance from them is forbidden, for they have no insight into the future, and their claims are filled with lies and half-truths. Their abilities may tempt some humans into thinking that the jinn are divine or worthy of fear. But the reality is that they are no more than another creation, subject to the same ultimate power as we are. They may be swift, they may be strong, and they may whisper unseen, but they cannot overpower a heart that is anchored in faith. A believer who recites the Quran, who remembers Allah, and who keeps firm in prayer, carries a protection that no jinn can penetrate. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, told us that reciting Ayat al-Kursi at night protects one from Shaytan until morning, and that Surah al-Baqarah drives them away from a home. These protections are simple acts of devotion, yet they shield us from beings that would otherwise terrify the imagination. The story of the powers of the jinn teaches us the importance of balance. On one hand, we must acknowledge their reality and their abilities, understanding that they are far beyond our physical limitations. On the other hand, we must never exaggerate their power or forget that Allah is greater than all. Their world may be filled with speed, invisibility, and shape-shifting, but our world is filled with the light of revelation, and that light is more powerful than any shadow. To fear the jinn is natural, but to trust in Allah is stronger. They are a creation of fire, but we are guided by the Creator of fire and light and clay alike. The lesson is clear. Their powers may inspire awe, but they are nothing compared to the strength of faith, the remembrance of Allah, and the certainty that He alone has authority over every realm, seen and unseen. One of the most chilling aspects of the jinn's history and their continued presence in our world is their association with magic. Magic, or seer as it is called in Arabic, is not a game, nor is it the simple sleight of hand practiced by entertainers who use illusions and tricks to amuse crowds. Real magic is something far darker and more sinister. It is a reality acknowledged in the Quran, spoken of in authentic narrations, and recognized by scholars throughout the centuries. It is the dangerous collaboration between rebellious jinn and misguided humans, and its purpose is almost always rooted in harm, corruption, and disbelief. Allah tells us in the Quran in Surah al-Baqarah about the people of Babylon who were tested with knowledge of magic. He sent 2 angels, Harut and Marut, as a trial, and they warned the people, we are only a test, so do not disbelieve by practicing magic." But despite this clear warning, many people rushed to learn it. They desired power, they craved influence, and they sought to control others. The verse explains that through magic they learned to separate husbands and wives, sowing discord in the most sacred of bonds. However, it also clarifies that they could harm no one except with Allah's permission. Those who pursued magic did so at the cost of their souls, for Allah declared that such people would have no share in the hereafter. The reason magic is so destructive is that it almost always involves a pact with the jinn. Rebellious jinn, often called shayateen, act as agents of corruption. They do not serve humans out of kindness. They demand submission, require acts of disobedience, and thrive on leading people astray. The human who seeks their assistance may think he is in control, but in reality, it is the jinn who hold the reins. They may require the magician to perform sacrifices, to commit acts of impurity, to insult or desecrate words of revelation, or to engage in rituals of worship directed away from Allah. These demands are the price for their cooperation, and in fulfilling them, the human falls deeper into disbelief. Thus, magic becomes not merely an act of harm, but a doorway to eternal ruin. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, made it clear that magic is one of the 7 destructive sins, those that ruin a person in this life and the next. He warned against sorcery, fortune-telling, and seeking aid from the unseen. In pre-Islamic times, soothsayers and astrologers would often work with jinn to gather snippets of information. The jinn would ascend to the lower heavens, eavesdrop on the conversations of the angels, and then rush back to deliver what they heard. But before reaching the soothsayer, they would mix that fragment of truth with many lies. This is why fortune-tellers sometimes appeared accurate, but their accuracy was built on deception. After the Quran was revealed, however, Allah guarded the skies with shooting stars and burning flames. The jinn themselves describe this in Surah Al-Jinn, saying, "We sought to reach the heaven, but we found it filled with stern guards and burning flames, and we used to sit therein in positions for hearing, but whoever listens now will find a burning flame lying in wait for him." From that moment on, their access was cut off, and their ability to deceive with stolen truths was diminished. Despite this divine protection, many people still fall prey to the magician's traps. In every era, there have been those who turn to jinn for wealth, for power, for love, or vengeance. They seek shortcuts to fulfill their desires, but in doing so, they sell their souls. Stories abound of individuals who thought they could control the jinn, commanding them to bring riches or to harm their enemies, only to find themselves enslaved by the very beings they sought to use. The jinn are masters of deceit, and what they offer is always wrapped in lies. They promise wealth but bring poverty. They promise healing but bring torment. They promise love but bring destruction. The human who partners with them ends up broken, abandoned, and cursed. Magic also manifests in many forms. Some is meant to harm directly, causing sickness or madness. Some is intended to separate loved ones, sowing hatred between spouses or families. Some is meant to attract, drawing hearts unnaturally towards someone. Others seek knowledge of the unseen through divination, astrology, or so-called spirit communication, all of which are avenues by which the jinn deceive. In every case, the foundation is the same: rebellion against Allah and reliance on a creation that should never be trusted. The Quran warns us that those who purchase magic gain nothing but loss. They harm themselves more than anyone else, and their ultimate end is destruction. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not merely warn about the reality of magic, but also gave guidance on protection. He taught us that reciting the Quran is a shield. Surah Al-Falaq and Surah An-Nas are powerful weapons against the forces of evil, revealed as protection against envy, whispers, and sorcery. Ayat al-Kursi guards the believer from Shaytan, and Surah al-Baqarah drives the jinn away from a home. He taught us to remember Allah in every moment, to say Bismillah before entering our homes, before eating, and before entering places of impurity, for these words close the doors through which the jinn seek entry. It is also important to remember that not every misfortune or illness is caused by magic or jinn. Many people, in fear, misinterpret natural struggles as supernatural attacks. The Prophet warned against this confusion. Psychological hardships, illnesses, and worldly trials are part of life, and they should not be hastily attributed to the unseen. However, real cases do exist, and when they do, the cure is always found in turning back to Allah, not in delving deeper into the traps of those who claim to control the unseen. Sadly, many charlatans exploit people in distress, demanding money and performing bizarre rituals, claiming to have power over jinn. In truth, they are either deceivers or themselves enslaved by the very forces they pretend to control. The actual path of protection is simple, pure, and rooted in faith. Trust in Allah alone. Hold firmly to His remembrance and keep the heart attached to Him. No jinn, no magician, no spell can harm the believer except by the will of Allah. And when Allah decrees harm, it is a test, not a punishment. The believer who responds with patience, prayer, and reliance upon Him is rewarded, while the one who seeks refuge in jinn or magic is destroyed. The association of the jinn with magic reveals both their power and their corruption. It shows us how easily promises of shortcuts can mislead humanity, how quickly desire can lead to ruin. However, it also demonstrates the strength of the Quran and the Sunnah as protective forces. The world has always been a battleground between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, and the story of magic is one of the clearest examples of how the jinn serve as agents of deception for those who turn away from Allah. To understand their connection to seer is to understand the importance of seeking refuge only in the Creator, never in the creation, and to recognize that while the jinn may whisper, deceive, and even collaborate with misguided humans, their power is nothing compared to the power of faith, humility, and steadfast remembrance of Allah. The jinn are not confined to legends of the past, nor do they exist only in distant deserts and stories. They are part of the unseen world that surrounds us even now, moving silently in realms that overlap with ours but remain hidden from our eyes. Allah created them to live upon the earth, just as He created us. But their dwelling places are often far different from the homes and cities of humanity. Their world is intertwined with ours, but it is veiled, concealed from human perception, unless they choose to make themselves known. To understand where the jinn live is to understand both their nature and the reasons behind the guidance the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, gave to protect us from their harm. Reports from the Quran and the Sunnah explain that the jinn favor certain places more than others. They are often drawn to areas of filth, desolation, and abandonment. This is why the Prophet taught his companions that jinn reside in ruins, graveyards, wilderness, and places that humanity shuns. They are found in deserts where silence stretches endlessly, in the deep wilderness where few humans tread, and in ancient ruins where decay has long taken hold. They gather in graveyards, lurking among the forgotten stones, and are also present in trash dumps and other unsanitary places. The Prophet specifically warned about bathrooms, saying that jinn inhabit such places. For this reason, he taught us to recite a supplication before entering, saying, "O Allah, I seek refuge with you from the male and female devils." By remembering Allah, a person shields himself from those who dwell in such impure domains. The oceans too are places of their dwelling. Some reports mention that many jinn were cast into the seas during the angelic battles that cleansed the earth of their corruption. Even today, narrations tell us that the Shayateen have their thrones set upon water. From there, they spread out, whispering and commanding their followers to cause mischief across the earth. The seas, vast and deep, remain a domain where many of them reside, concealed beneath waves and currents far beyond human reach. The mountains also shelter them, providing remote strongholds where they gather unseen. It is in these hidden places, far from human eyes, that their communities thrive. Yet, their presence is not limited to distant lands or unclean places. The jinn are also capable of living among humans, entering homes and moving unseen through towns and cities. They may inhabit a house where Allah is not remembered, where sin and heedlessness dominate. The Prophet warned that a home in which Surah Al-Baqarah is not recited becomes a dwelling place for the Shayateen, but a house filled with Quran and remembrance becomes a fortress of light that they cannot endure. This is why believers are encouraged to keep their homes alive with prayer, recitation, and remembrance, for such acts not only cleanse the space physically, but also spiritually. Their presence is also tied to human negligence. When a person enters his home without mentioning the name of Allah, the jinn may join with him. When he eats without saying Bismillah, the jinn may eat alongside him. But when he remembers Allah, they are barred, left outside, unable to partake. This constant link between forgetfulness and vulnerability shows the wisdom in the Prophet's teaching to begin every action with the name of Allah, for remembrance is the barrier that prevents the unseen from intruding into our lives. It is also narrated that jinn wander in marketplaces, places of buying and selling where distraction and heedlessness are common. These are places where people often forget Allah, consumed by trade, bargaining, and desire. The Prophet described markets as among the most disliked places to Allah, for they are filled with worldly focus, noise, and neglect of worship. It is in such places that the jinn gather, whispering into hearts, stirring envy and greed, and feeding the arrogance of wealth. While humans see only the bustle of trade, the unseen world teems with those who take advantage of distraction. What is essential to understand is that their dwellings reflect their nature. Just as humans build homes suited to their needs, the jinn inhabit places that resonate with their essence. Being created from fire, they are drawn to barren lands, hot deserts, and areas of desolation. Being inclined toward impurity, the rebellious among them dwell in filth and ruins. And being deceivers, they thrive in the spaces where human negligence leaves openings. Yet, not all jinn are corrupt, and not all seek to harm. Among them are believers who live quietly, worshipping Allah as they were created to do, avoiding conflict with humanity. But the disbelievers among them, the Shayateen, are relentless in seeking to mislead. The Quran itself affirms their hidden presence when Allah says in Surah Al-Araf, "Indeed, he and his tribe see you from where you do not see them." This verse is a reminder that the unseen is not empty. They watch us, they know of our movements, but we are veiled from theirs. Their invisibility is both their strength and their test, for it allows them to whisper unseen, yet it also limits them. They cannot act without permission from Allah, and they cannot harm a believer who shields himself with remembrance and faith. Understanding where the jinn live also helps explain the numerous protections the Prophet provided for us. He taught that a believer should not spend time in desolate places unnecessarily, especially at night, for these are domains where jinn are numerous. He taught that before sleeping, one should recite Ayat al-Kursi, the last verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, and the two surahs of refuge, Al-Falaq and An-Nas, for these are shields against the unseen. He warned against carelessness in cleanliness, for impurity attracts the jinn, while purity drives them away. He instructed that homes should not be left empty of remembrance, for an abandoned house becomes a place for the unseen to dwell. All of these teachings point back to the reality that while the jinn exist among us, we are never left unprotected. Their dwellings are reminders of the unseen reality of our world. The graveyards remind us of death, and in them dwell those unseen who also await judgment. The ruins remind us of the fleeting nature of civilizations, and in them linger the jinn who watch as human glory crumbles. The oceans remind us of the vastness of creation, and in their depths live beings we cannot perceive. The mountains remind us of majesty and endurance, and within their caverns and shadows, the jinn make their homes. Even in our own houses, if we leave them void of faith, they may find a place. But in every case, remembrance of Allah cleanses and protects, transforming a dwelling into a fortress of light. The reality of the jinn's homes should not drive a believer to fear every shadow or suspect every ruin. Instead, it should awaken awareness of the unseen and deepen trust in Allah's protection. They are part of creation, with their world overlapping ours, but they have no authority over those who cling to faith. Their presence in desolate, unclean, or heedless places is not a sign of their strength, but a reflection of human negligence. For where Allah's name is mentioned, they cannot remain. Where Quran is recited, they flee, and where hearts are filled with faith, their whispers are silenced. In the end, their dwellings tell us more about ourselves than about them. They dwell in ruins because humans abandon those places. They linger in graveyards because we too forget what lies ahead. They enter homes where there is no remembrance because people neglected the protection Allah gave. The jinn take advantage of what we leave unguarded. Thus, to understand where they live is to know how to keep them at bay. Purify your space, fill it with remembrance, and the unseen world becomes powerless. The jinn may inhabit the shadows, but the light of faith drives away every shadow, no matter how ancient or how hidden. The history of the jinn is not meant to be a tale locked away in the ancient past. It is a story that runs like an unseen current beneath the story of humanity. Their existence before Adam, their rebellion, their battles and their downfall were not written only for us to hear with curiosity, but for us to understand as lessons that continue to shape our lives today. When Allah placed Adam upon the earth, it was not onto untouched ground. This world had already witnessed corruption, bloodshed and rebellion. The soil beneath our feet had already absorbed the cries of conflict, and the seas had already hidden the exiles of the defeated jinn. Humanity was placed into a world that had a history of disobedience, and with that placement came responsibility. We were given the trust to worship Allah, to establish justice, and to succeed where others before us had failed. The story of the jinn is a mirror for humanity. It shows us what happens when power is abused, when arrogance replaces humility, and when the purpose of creation is forgotten. The jinn were granted strength and speed, abilities far beyond ours, and they were given free will. Yet, instead of using these blessings in the service of Allah, many of them turned them toward destruction. They spilled blood, fought wars, and corrupted the earth until the angels themselves were sent to restore order. Their fall teaches us that might without guidance is nothing but a path to ruin. Humanity, though weaker in body, was gifted with something greater, the light of revelation and the guidance of prophets. This is what makes our role as Khalifa upon the earth different. We are not left to wander in darkness as they once did. We are given the Quran, the Sunnah, and the examples of prophets to show us how to live in obedience and humility. The fall of Iblis is also a timeless warning. He had risen above his kind, worshipping Allah with such devotion that he was raised into the company of the angels. Yet, in a single moment of arrogance, all of it was lost. He refused to bow to Adam, seeing fire as superior to clay, and by that act he revealed the disease of pride within his heart. That arrogance made him the eternal enemy of humanity, and it shows us that pride is the most dangerous of sins. It can erase a lifetime of worship and throw a servant of Allah into rebellion. The lesson for us is clear. No matter how much we pray, fast, or strive in outward devotion, if pride takes root, it can undo all our efforts. Humility is the shield of faith, and without it, a person may fall as Iblis fell. The story of the Jinn also reveals a profound truth about the ongoing struggle between good and evil. It did not begin with humanity, and it will not end until the day of judgment. The Jinn corrupted the earth before us, and their rebellion led to their downfall. Humanity now walks the same road, facing the same choices. Will we fill the world with worship, justice, and humility, or will we repeat the mistakes of those who came before, choosing arrogance, bloodshed, and corruption? Every generation of humanity answers this question with actions. Nations rise and fall, civilizations flourish and crumble, and in every story we see the reflection of the Jinn's history. Pride brings destruction, humility brings salvation. Even now, the Jinn live among us in their hidden realm. They watch, they whisper, and they influence, but they do not control. Their presence is a reminder that the unseen world is real, that we are not alone in our test. Some of them believe, submitting to Allah and worshipping Him as they were created to do. Others disbelieve, following Iblis in his rebellion, becoming his soldiers in the eternal struggle to mislead humanity. Their whispers are constant, urging humans toward pride, greed, envy, and despair. But Allah has given us protection stronger than any of their schemes. A heart anchored in faith cannot be swayed by their whispers. A tongue that remembers Allah cannot be silenced by their influence. And a home filled with Quran becomes a fortress against their entry. This is why the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us so many daily protections. He instructed us to begin everything with the name of Allah, to recite the verses of the Quran, to seek refuge in the morning and evening, and to fill our homes with prayer and remembrance. These are not small habits, but shields against the unseen world. Every act of remembrance is a barrier raised against the Shaytan. Every verse recited is a light that drives them away. In this way, humanity is never left defenseless. We may be physically weaker than the Jinn, but spiritually we are given weapons of light that no creature of fire can withstand. The history of the Jinn should not instill fear in us, but rather awareness. It serves as a reminder that the earth has always been a place of trial, that the unseen world is real, and that our purpose is profound. We were created not to repeat the failures of the Jinn, but to rise above them. We were given the chance to carry the trust of worship, to uphold justice, and to live in humility. When the purpose of creation is forgotten, the Jinn were granted strength and speed, abilities far beyond ours, and they were given free will. Yet instead of using these blessings in the service of Allah, many of them turned them toward destruction. They spilled blood, fought wars, and corrupted the earth until the angels themselves were sent to restore order. Their fall teaches us that might without guidance is nothing but a path to ruin. Humanity, though weaker in body, was gifted with something greater, the light of revelation and the guidance of prophets. This is what makes our role as Khalifa upon the earth different. We are not left to wander in darkness as they once did. We are given the Quran, the Sunnah, and the examples of prophets to show us how to live in obedience and humility. The fall of Iblis is also a timeless warning. He had risen above his kind, worshipping Allah with such devotion that he was raised into the company of the angels. Yet, in a single moment of arrogance, all of it was lost. He refused to bow to Adam, seeing fire as superior to clay, and by that act he revealed the disease of pride within his heart. That arrogance made him the eternal enemy of humanity, and it shows us that pride is the most dangerous of sins. It can erase a lifetime of worship and throw a servant of Allah into rebellion. The lesson for us is clear. No matter how much we pray, fast, or strive in outward devotion, if pride takes root, it can undo all our efforts. Humility is the shield of faith, and without it, a person may fall as Iblis fell. The story of the Jinn also reveals a profound truth about the ongoing struggle between good and evil. It did not begin with humanity, and it will not end until the day of judgment. The Jinn corrupted the earth before us, and their rebellion led to their downfall. Humanity now walks the same road, facing the same choices. Will we fill the world with worship, justice, and humility? Or will we repeat the mistakes of those who came before, choosing arrogance, bloodshed, and corruption? Every generation of humanity answers this question with actions. Nations rise and fall, civilizations flourish and crumble. And in every story, we see the reflection of the Jinn's history. Pride brings destruction, humility brings salvation. Even now, the Jinn live among us in their hidden realm. They watch, they whisper, and they influence, but they do not control. Their presence is a reminder that the unseen world is real, that we are not alone in our test. Some of them believe, submitting to Allah and worshipping Him as they were created to do. Others disbelieve, following Iblis in his rebellion, becoming his soldiers in the eternal struggle to mislead humanity. Their whispers are constant, urging humans toward pride, greed, envy, and despair. But Allah has given us protection stronger than any of their schemes. A heart anchored in faith cannot be swayed by their whispers. A tongue that remembers Allah cannot be silenced by their influence. And a home filled with Quran becomes a fortress against their entry. This is why the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us so many daily protections. He instructed us to begin everything with the name of Allah, to recite the verses of the Quran, to seek refuge in the morning and evening, and to fill our homes with prayer and remembrance. These are not small habits, but shields against the unseen world. Every act of remembrance is a barrier raised against the Shaytan. Every verse recited is a light that drives them away. In this way, humanity is never left defenseless. We may be physically weaker than the Jinn, but spiritually we are given weapons of light that no creature of fire can withstand. The history of the Jinn should not instill fear in us, but rather awareness. It serves as a reminder that the earth has always been a place of trial, that the unseen world is real, and that our purpose is profound. We were created not to repeat the failures of the Jinn, but to rise above them. We were given the chance to carry the trust of worship, to uphold justice, and to live in humility. When the angels questioned Allah about placing another creation upon the earth, fearing that humanity would only cause bloodshed as the Jinn had, Allah responded with wisdom. Indeed, I know that which you do not know. Within humanity would be prophets, righteous servants, and believers who would fill the earth with light where others had left darkness. The story of the Jinn also teaches us that evil is not an external force that overwhelms without choice. The Jinn may whisper, they may tempt, they may even harm with Allah's permission, but in the end, every soul chooses. The Jinn failed because they decided on arrogance. Iblis fell because he chose pride. Humanity too will rise or fall based on the choices we make. Every prayer we neglect, every act of pride we nurture, every sin we justify echoes the rebellion of the Jinn. Every act of humility, every remembrance of Allah, every choice to obey reflects the wisdom of why humanity was created. As we reflect on their story, we should remember that the world is still a battleground between truth and falsehood. The Jinn still live, unseen but present, and the whispers of Iblis continue until the final day. But the believer is not helpless. With faith, remembrance, and humility, we can rise above their influence. We can fulfill the trust that Adam was given. We can succeed where the Jinn failed. The Quran reminds us again and again that victory belongs not to those who are strongest in body, but to those who are steadfast in faith. So, the story of the jinn before humanity is not simply about another creation. It is about us. It is about our place in the divine plan. It is a warning of what happens when arrogance takes root, and a reminder of what is possible when humility prevails. The jinn had their chance, and many of them failed. Now we walk upon the earth they once ruled, carrying the trust they abandoned. The question is whether we will follow their path of destruction or rise with the light of revelation. And the answer lies in every prayer we pray, every sin we resist, every moment we choose humility over pride. Their story is finished, but ours is still being written.